begin with a public presentation on the Cache County School District school reopening plan for the 2020-21 year, and then we will have public input right after that. So we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Tim Smith. He is one of our deputy superintendents and has been working with his committee on this plan, and so he will tell us what we need to know.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make a few comments before we got into the reopening plan in general. First of all, I just wanted to acknowledge how difficult this situation is for all of us. I think it's difficult for our parents, it's difficult for students who are hoping to have a normal school year, it's difficult for our employees. It's hard to believe, I think, when you look at it, that we've only been in this 4 months, because it feels like we've made a couple of years worth of decisions in about 4 months. And I think we all ought to acknowledge that this is something that we want to end, something that we hope when we get through, we can look back and figure out what we learned from the whole experience. But I don't think any of us are enjoying too much the time that we're in with this. Another item is, as I was thinking about this, about the public trust that our patrons and our employees have, especially our patrons who send us their students. I'm not sure that this isn't a time where we feel the weight of that public trust more heavily than we have in the past. And we take that quite seriously. We take the health and safety of our students and the health and safety of our employees very seriously, and there's a lot of unknowns out there. I know for me, it's been kind of comforting to know that we have at the helm in our school district the longest serving superintendent in the state of Utah, and by his side a business manager and a deputy superintendent that have also been here for a very long time. And it's been great to rely on their wisdom as they've been through these times before, whether it be H1N1 flu or the economy, and to be able to kind of have them at the helm has been very helpful for all of us, I know, at the district office. There are a lot of moving parts with plans like this, or with dealing with a pandemic. There's a lot of things to consider. And the plan that we're going to present tonight has been worked on by a number of departments, and I'll probably miss some of them, but our curriculum and instruction department, our technology group, our business office, our human resources office, some of the other groups, our Cache Education Association has been helpful. We've been working closely with our school administrators. We've been working with our maintenance department, who is responsible for cleaning and taking care of our buildings and making sure they're ventilated, to discuss issues. We've been working with transportation to figure out what busing is going to look like when we operate and reopen. Our school lunch program has been phenomenal. You're aware that in the spring they fed about 25,000 meals a day to our patrons, and even some of our charter schools they took care of. And we just appreciate all of the departments and the lifting that they've done to help us. And the plan is only part of the puzzle. There's a lot of work that goes into implementing this plan. Other thing I want to say is this is simply a plan, and if we haven't learned anything else in the last 4 months, it's that tomorrow's maybe going to look different than what yesterday did. And I remember that first week when we were going from day to day to day, and it seems like the governor was on every other day, and we were changing directions one day to the next. And so part of the difficulty in considering opening a district of our size is anticipating not only all of the conditions or challenges or changes that we may face as a school district, but there's no way to really anticipate every situation that each of our families are in. And so we really have to develop a plan that has some options, and then our families have to make the best decision they can in their situation for their family. And so we tried to develop the plan so it's adaptable, and I'll kind of cover that in just a few minutes. Following on that, this plan it's very general in nature, and that was intended. We knew that things were going to change, and so all of our protocols, our hygiene protocols, our cleaning protocols, our illness protocols, our contact tracing protocols, our mitigation tactics in different settings in our schools, all of that detail sits outside of the plan. The plan is intended to give some general big rocks of where we're headed as a school district, so parents know what some of their choices are, but we anticipate lots of questions. In fact, we've been putting together a frequently asked questions, a couple of documents, one for our employees and one for our students. Is that me? I'll try this. I tried the under the mask thing. You guys hear me okay back there? Okay, great. So anyway, the plan's meant to be general, and all of the details are intended to stay outside the plan. We met with the health department this morning, who are developing protocols for schools. They have an 18-page handbook they handed us. If we had put that in the plan, it would have added 18 pages to the plan, and it's going to change. So you just need to know that not everything is in there. All right, I think I
Tim,
covered that one.
Tim, I don't
Yes.
think that microphone is picking you up.
Not picking me up, man.
Can you hear him in the back? They can't.
Is that better? Got me on that one? Okay, perfect. All right, so with that, let's just jump into the plan so you guys have an idea of where we're headed. All right. Oh, yes, I video muted that. Thank you, Mike. The board members see that? So you don't have to crank your heads. Okay, great. So some of you, I'm just going to give a synopsis since we have a group here. I know many of the board members know this, but it was only about 3 weeks ago that we received reopening requirements and recommendations from the state of Utah. They came through the Utah State Board of Education. Some of the directives we received came from the governor's office. And so it was just 3 weeks ago that we received word that we would be required to have a reopening plan and have that ready by August 1st to submit to the state and be available for our public. So it's been a heavy lift over these 3 weeks to get a kind of a plan laid out. I know every school district in the state is working on that. One of the things that we thought was very important with regards to our plan, and we've thought this has been important all along, is that we get feedback from our employees, that we get feedback from our parents, even from students. So when the school year ended in the end of May, we actually in the middle of May, we started a process of reaching out to our parents, reaching out to students, reaching out to our teachers. We've just gone through an online learning experience and trying to learn from that experience. We had some focus groups with all of these groups. We had surveys. And when we were finished with that, we held an administrator summit on the 2nd and 3rd of June. And the first day of that summit was all about what did we learn from this teaching experience that we just had, and what could we improve on? And we came away with about 8 or 9 different points that if we go back into a school soft closure where we're providing education online again, even in the online environment where some of our parents are going to choose that, what are some things we learned that we could take into that experience? The second day was spent discussing with our principals what happens if we get to fall and we're still in what was then called yellow phase, and we have to start school in a yellow phase. What will that look like? And we had some information about that then. When we got these requirements, we sent this information to parents shortly after we received it, and sent them the requirements, just how the state had sent them to us, and asked them for their feedback. We got
unprecedented feedback. I have not seen feedback like that in the district. We heard from 6,800 of our homes in the district, which is well over 90% of our households. Gave us their opinion on the requirements and recommendations. We heard from about 1,500 of our employees, and we've taken that information and kind of distilled it for as we went through the plan. I'm just going to share real quickly what some of those concerns were. So this has been one of the major concerns, kind of debated across the state all year, but our parents, one of their major concerns was face coverings. And we'll talk about kind of some of their opinions on that in just a minute. Another major concern was children coming to school ill. So I'm committed not to send my kids to school ill. Will other parents follow suit and not send their kids to school ill? School cleaning, they were very interested in how are we going to clean the schools and take care of hygiene in the schools. The social and emotional well-being of their children. The spring was a difficult time, so the kids were isolated and they were concerned about how their kids would handle either online environments or coming back into a setting like we're facing in the fall. The availability of online instruction. What if I want to continue with online instruction and I don't want to come back to in-person instruction? So they were interested in that. And a desire for normalcy when it comes to in-person instruction. Probably overwhelmingly, our parents in the Valley said, we want to come back, we want things to be normal again, and we can all say in our hearts, don't we all wish we could be normal again? So that was something we took into consideration. So this is face coverings, and this was actually taken a snapshot just before the governor put out his directive requiring face masks in all K-12 settings. And so I don't know if you can see that well, but I'll describe it to you. So I think I actually misquoted this in the paper. You read the article the other day. I think I didn't have this in front of me, and I think I gave the paper a lower number. But 58% of our parents said, we don't have a problem with face masks. About 19% said, I'm not sure how I feel about face masks right now. And another nearly 23% said they wouldn't support face masks in the schools. And of course, as I said, the governor came out with his directive a few days later. This is in-person versus online instruction. So as a school district, you can imagine if you're trying to operate a school and you really don't know how many of your parents are thinking, yeah, I may want to choose online versus in-person. Well, to design instruction for both of those settings and to be able to pivot and have teachers in both those settings is quite an undertaking. And so 77% of our patrons said they wanted in-person instruction. They wanted to come back. About 9%, 8.7% said we plan on signing our kids up for online instruction. And another 14% weren't sure at the time. So again, just a snapshot, 6,800 households. 8% of our district would be about 1,500 of our 19,000 kids who would choose online instruction. And we don't know if that number will shift. It'll probably shift as conditions change, or and we hope to be as flexible as possible. Parent chooses online and decides a couple weeks later we want to shift back. Maybe a little difficult in our high schools where we have courses. We may have to switch at quarter breaks or trimester breaks, but we'd like as much flexibility for our parents as possible of moving back and forth between those environments.
Hold that closer.
Okay. All right. This one is one of the most effective ways to fight the virus, and this is something our superintendent has been very passionate about, that if we're going to be successful, we need to have parents keeping their kids home when they're sick. We need to have our employees staying home when they're sick. And we have kind of a tradition of teachers pulling up their bootstraps and coming to work because it's harder to get a sub and take care of their class when they're ill, and students getting rewarded for good attendance. And so those kind of practices we need to take a really careful look at and just say we're better off to stay home when we're sick. But about 95% of our parents said, yeah, we support that. We'll try to do that. And a small slice, about 5%, said they're still working on kind of making those accommodations on how they could pull that off in their home. All right, let's jump to employee feedback. And again, we took about 1,500 responses and boiled them down to some categories that our employees were concerned about. Number one, again, face coverings. Our employees were concerned about how that would work. How do I teach? Well, how do the kids see my mouth if I'm teaching phonics? There's lots of issues with trying to teach in a face covering. Taking time off when ill, finding a substitute. In a normal economy, it's tough to find substitutes, enough substitutes. So this is a big concern of our teachers. Well, if I get ill and you want me to stay home, can I find a substitute to cover my class? School cleaning, another big issue for them. Who will be responsible for school cleaning? How will we do school cleaning? Those kind of issues. Clear expectations across schools and classrooms. I had another kind of tagline to this, was just kind of a unified approach is what the teachers wanted. Let's all be on the same page when it comes to our protocols so that kids know what we expect and vice versa, that they can expect from us. Difficulty in supporting both online and in-person instruction. Contemplating trying to teach a class during the day and then support kids that are at home. That's a big lift for teachers. And so we really took that seriously and talked about how that might look. And then of course, this one comes up a lot even in normal times. Class sizes in Utah are large, and how do we help mitigate those? And that's really a challenge. You know, our state has large class sizes, and we've built our schools for large class sizes. And we don't have a lot of other places to put kids if we're in kind of a normal instruction mode. I took a trip several years ago back east. I don't think they're any different situation. Their classes are 20 to 24, so quite a bit smaller than ours. But if you walk into their classrooms, they built them for 20 to 24. So they're going to be in the same boat we are back there. And then finally, big item was how do we protect our high-risk population with our staff, whether those be teachers, bus drivers, lunch folks, and those were things that were important to our employees. This was a difficult one to ask, just because figuring out how to ask it appropriately, but we settled on asking our staff, how many of you or someone in your immediate household identify as high risk? And we gave them the very specific definition that the state had given us for high risk. And that was about 32% of our employees that identified that either them or someone in their household was high risk. Now, I'll just pause here and say, if you're the superintendent, what keeps you up at night is, I don't want to lose a single person on my watch. I don't want a single person to be harmed by this virus. And so concern for those high-risk employees is paramount, and I'm sure it keeps him up at night. If you're a chief operating officer, if you're responsible to try to run a school during the day, and that's your only concern, and somebody tells you that 30% of your staff might not be coming, but yeah, most of your students will be, that's a very daunting task to figure out how to run a school in that environment and how to pivot and do those kind of things. So you can see the kind of challenges we're up against. This is face coverings. The requirement for our employees to wear face coverings, that was in the original documents from the state. And so we asked our faculty if they had any thing that would inhibit them from wearing a mask. About 95% said, no, we're good. And about 5 or 6% said, yeah, we probably need some accommodations with regards to masks. So we'll have to work through those issues. Staying home when sick, 93% said, yeah, we can buy into that. We'll stay home when we're sick. About 7% said, that's going to be difficult. And we didn't discriminate between full-time, part-time, but our guess is there's some people that stay home, they miss a paycheck because they're not full-time, they're not benefited, they don't have sick leave. So those are some issues that we have to grapple with as a school district as well. This is just to give you a sense, and it's only 2 comments, so bear with me. When we put out the plan yesterday for public comment, far less. I think I had, first time when I put out the requirements, I had 600 comments in the first 15 minutes. Yesterday we had I think we're just about 260, 24 hours later. But these are the kind of, I want to share with you just 2 responses. Thank you, we love the plan, so glad to be in the Cache District. It's thorough and well planned. We appreciate the options and consideration of varied needs. Thank you for allowing normalcy to the extent possible. Great job, Cache County. And then we go to, your plan's so frustratingly vague, I don't have any specifics on what a day school looks like. Also, why are we in such a hurry to start? Let's push our start date back and figure out a real solid plan. So those are the kind of comments we're getting. It's you know, why'd you do this? Or, gee, I'm so glad you did it that way. And I think we expected that. So I'm going to jump into the plan. And we're going to have training for all of our administrators, our staff, employees, and I'm not going to go into the depth that we're going to do with them, but I just want to kind of talk about the basic structure of the plan. So if you look on the left-hand side of this graphic, it says safe and healthy schools. And we know during the pandemic that we're trying to do something very difficult. We're trying to open up a school in a school setting with students, a lot of students, and with staff, and bus them and feed them and teach them and do all of those things. And so these safe and healthy school items become rather important, that we attend to them and that we're good at them. So talk about hygiene, illness monitoring, cleaning on that side of the house. And I'll go through some of those things in just a minute. And then on the other side, we talk about teaching, learning, and engagement. So how does instruction look like? How do we get family and community engagement? How do we attend to the mental and social health of our kids? And what do we do about staffing and personnel? So that's kind of a general overview of the plan. We did a little thumbnail sheet for you if you want to pick one up on your way out that kind of just gives you a little more language with this. Somebody told us the plan was very thorough, like this one, and then somebody else says you should have just made it 1 page with bullets. That's much easier to digest. So this is information from the state health department and from the state office of education about what we do know about this virus, about how it incubates, that if you're exposed, you could incubate for 14 days before you contract it. Patients are contagious 2 to 2.5 days before they show symptoms, and 7 to 9 days after symptoms. The reproduction number, you may have heard that. How fast is the virus reproducing? Goes up and down based on social behavior. You can certainly turn on the TV and watch the news and see how social behavior is driving what the virus is doing with regards to that. And we've seen, the superintendent mentioned to me this morning, some very good models in some other countries, which if they could flatten the curve before they started school, they're functioning very well. Some of them started in March and are doing well, but some that started without flattening that curve are having difficulty. We know that the virus spreads through close contact, roughly 3 to 6 feet, and it spreads through respiratory droplets primarily. And we also know that it can, not the primary way it does, but it spreads through touching surfaces or objects, and when touching the eye, nose, or mouth. So if you just look up here, you can see my pointer here. What do we do about that? If we know these things about the virus, if we can isolate people with symptoms, minimize the outbreak probability with social behavior, physical distance, use good respiratory hygiene, that's what we have on our faces, and use good physical hygiene. Those are all mitigating factors that we can use to attack this virus. And then these are 7 characteristics that the state gave us of just some things to consider between high and low risk. So for example, if you're in movement, if your movement's more directed, if you've got a elementary school class and you're walking them down the hallway and they're all in the line and they're all masked up, that's going to be a lot better than you let them loose and let them kind of mingle and run around together. So directed movement's a little bit better, undirected movement, a little bit higher risk. And you all know this one, the more than 6 feet, you're at lower risk, and less than 6 feet, you're at higher risk. And if you go through a lot of these characteristics, one of the best tools we have at our disposal is masks. And in fact, there was a study came out just this week from one of our universities here in the state that talked about that. And I'm just going to raise 3 points out of that study because there is a lot of debate. You could probably find some research that may show something opposite, but it says there was scientific uncertainty with regards to masks when they first come out. And there was valid agencies telling you one thing one day and another agency was telling you something else. It says, oops, there is now convincing evidence from multiple controlled experiments and field observations that wearing masks reduces the transmission of COVID-19 for the public. Masks prevent infected people from spreading the virus to others. Kind of want to emphasize that. So by wearing a mask, you're helping others not catch what you may have. They don't have conclusive evidence that goes the other direction, that somebody wearing a mask may not catch it if somebody that is infected isn't wearing a mask. So that's a little more difficult. Cloth masks can stop 90% or more of dispersal of droplets carrying the virus. So you don't have to have an N95 surgical mask to mitigate the effects of the virus. I probably shouldn't have thrown this in here, but I thought it was interesting. But this is a tweet from our favorite president, and he actually says that in his tweet, so I'm not making that up. But just this morning or last night, he tweeted and said, it's patriotic to wear a face mask, and there's nobody more patriotic than me. Signed, your favorite president. And just today, he got on the news again and said he's now supporting wearing of masks. So take that for what it's worth. All right, I mentioned to everyone that schools are very difficult places to operate. So if you take those 7 characteristics that I showed you earlier, they're down the left-hand side of this table: movement, duration, proximity, group size. And then lower risk is directed versus undirected movement, duration 15 minutes versus less than 15 minutes versus greater than. On a regular classroom setting, it's very difficult to direct all the movement, to not be in there for more than 15 minutes, to limit 6 people to 6 feet apart. Touch is high, congestion is high in a classroom. So how do you mitigate that in a classroom? You mask up. That's one of the best tools we have to help the spread of the virus. So we do have tools, but people kind of got to be all on the same page. Transitions, just another example for you to see. Again, your touch is maybe low if people aren't touching door handles, and we can prop doors open and we can minimize things like drinking fountain use. But masking up when you're making transitions is helpful. Are all of our teachers going to wear masks when they're teaching? Well, the directive says if you can't achieve physical distancing, yes, wear a mask. If you can achieve physical distancing, some of our teachers may be teaching without a mask because they've figured out how to configure their room where they have some distance. Some may wear a shield if they want to see their lips moving so that they're teaching a small reading group or that kind of thing. So you kind of got to apply these principles across a variety of settings. You saw the left side of that graphic. This is long-standing. We preached this all last year. One of the best ways to mitigate this virus is simple hand washing. Something doctors and nurses learned a long time ago, that when they had people dying from stays in the hospital, that it came down to simple hand washing was a major contributor to helping protect their patients. And then we talked a little bit about masks with respiratory hygiene. We know, and it's in the plan, and some things are subtle in the plan, and they're not explained in detail. So if you read the last line of this paragraph, for example, it simply says accommodations will be made for students or staff who are unable to wear masks for medical and health reasons. So just this morning, I got a group of special educators, a group of nurses, and some counselors that deal with social and emotional issues talking about mask protocols to see if we can come up with a protocol for how we mitigate or accommodate people in those situations. Some of our parents' kids have asthma. Some of our teachers have asthma. It's difficult to be in a mask. So how can we achieve the same level of protection and make some accommodations for some of these audiences? We know that symptom checking is very important. We hope this is going to go on in our homes in the mornings, that we can educate parents enough that they can look for some symptoms, and if their kids are showing any of these symptoms, that they keep them home from school, and that we can continue to provide instruction for them. I'm going to make an admission right now, and sometimes it feels like you have a terminal illness or something, but my family got COVID in June. I picked it up from my wife works in a public library. We figured that's where she got it. I got it a couple days after her. My son got it. My daughter got it, who was visiting, and my son-in-law, so it's pretty contagious. None of us ever reached the 100.4 temperature threshold, and most kids don't. My wife and I were pretty sick. My son had a scratchy throat. That was it. My daughter and son-in-law, a little worse, kind of broke along age lines. But anyway, we had all of these symptoms, most of these symptoms, but we didn't have them at the threshold, or they were different based on the person. So very difficult sometimes. I would suggest you get any of them if you're symptomatic and it's 2 days before that you're contagious. Stay home if you notice any of these symptoms at all. We do have some illness protocols, which I'll show you later. And these illness protocols, we did not put them in the plan. Number one, because we knew they might change. Number two, they're really intended for our office staff and our teachers to know how to deal with illness when a kid becomes sick at school and how we handle that situation. So I'll show you an example of an illness protocol here in a minute. Cleaning, we're definitely going to be working more on high-touch surfaces, cleaning those more regularly. We've purchased electrostatic, what they call foggers, but that's not the correct term, to disinfect areas in our schools. We have some cleaning protocols that we're working on for our schools, and I can show you some of those as well. So that's those mitigating factors along the left side of that big graphic I showed you earlier. We're going to jump to the other side now. So a majority of our patrons said we want to be back in in-person instruction. And so that's one of the options that we are presenting to the board in the plan is to, and we sent this out to parents rather early, is to say we would like to try to start school on August 20th. Again, circumstances may change. And we'd like to end on, I think it's May 28th or 29th at the end of the school year and follow the school calendar as closely as possible. We recognize that with staff out at home or with students who become ill and are at home, that we're going to have to make some adjustments for that. So if you see this camera over here against the wall, we actually are broadcasting. We didn't know how many people we would have here today. So we're broadcasting what goes on here today over into 2 other rooms that are devices much like our students would have at home. And we're buying broadcast units for our schools. So in some cases, we may have kiddos that are home. Maybe they're under quarantine. They're not really sick, but they've got to be isolated or quarantined for 10 to 14 days. But they still want to participate in their class. And so we're asking that our teachers accommodate those kids that are going to be out short term, so they don't lose the continuity of being in their class, keeping up with their class. And the same with teachers. We're hoping when they stay home ill or in quarantine, maybe they're perfectly fine when they're home, and they want to teach back remotely without using sick days to their classroom, we can do that short term and have them broadcast back into their classroom. We recognized that teaching both these short-term students that were going to be home and trying to do your regular class was going to take some extra time. So we were proposing to the board that we shorten our school day by 45 minutes in all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, to allow our teachers some more time for office hours and preparation, in addition to their other preparation time, to provide some instruction and support for both their in-person students and their remote students that might be in there. And then we are providing online learning. We have, as I showed you earlier, we had about 8% of our patrons say we really don't want to come back. And so we're trying to provide online instruction. We have done for a long time in this school district 9 through 12, but we've been working all summer, Kurt Jenkins and his group, to spin up a K through 12 online program for our students. The online program for elementary kids is called Cash Students Connect, and it will be for K through 6 students, and they will have a Cache County School District licensed teacher to teach them. And we will scale that based on the numbers that we see signing up for online education. Kurt, you opened pre-registration this morning. What's your numbers looking like? Okay, secondary, you have any idea on that one? Okay. So I gave you the idea that 8%, if we calculate it, it's about 1,500 kids. We're just gonna have to see through this pre-registration process how many of those actually choose to go online versus they thought that about 2 weeks ago. In the middle and high schools, that's through a program called Utah Students Connect. And it's a consortium that the Cache District entered into many years ago with several of the northern Utah school districts. And those students may have a teacher from Davis School District, or they may have a teacher from Cache County School District, but we kind of scale that as we need to offer the different courses to the students. We're working hard to do, we checked out about 5,000 Chromebooks in the spring for our students out of our 19,000 students. We do want to continue to provide technology to our students who find themselves in remote learning opportunities or online opportunities. So we're working on that as well as the broadcast equipment that I talked to you earlier about. Again, I talked about this one earlier, but our superintendent has, again, very passionate about this one, is that we need a partnership with homes and schools, is that we're all be committed to not sending ourselves or our kids to school when they're ill. And I think that can go a long way in helping things. We did talk a little bit about mental and social and emotional health. This district has, and it's also through Kurt's team, we have ramped up our mental health services, our counseling services in all of our schools over the last 5 years. And those services are pretty important during this time as well, and are available to parents, whether they're in our online program or whether they're in our in-person program. And so we'll continue to work on those services for our parents. As I said earlier, this is probably what keeps folks up at night, but we will plan on trying to mitigate our employees who are in high-risk categories. What that looks like in every instance, some will probably be teaching in their classrooms, but we take extra measures in those classrooms. Some may be teaching remotely, some may be teaching in our online program. We'll do our very best to mitigate those, but it's a very difficult undertaking when we are very people-driven. Education is people-driven. People drive buses, they feed lunch, they serve lunch, they sit in small reading groups, they teach students, and it's very hard to operate in our industry without people. All right, board members, do you have any questions so far before I give you a couple more documents.
We're good.
I know you've had, and some of you emailed me and I responded to your emails during the week, so. Okay, I'm going to jump out really quickly. I'll try to end this. In addition to the plan itself, we are required to submit, and we sent these out to everybody. They're transparent. There's nothing hidden in here, but this language gets a little detailed. We're required to send the state some assurances that we're doing face coverings, that we're taking some mitigating factors in classrooms, that we're working with our local health department. And so this is an assurances document that will be going to the state when we submit our plan on August 1st. But we purposely kept it out of the plan just to save ourselves some headache if there's some changes in that. And then another document that we sent to everyone are these mitigation tactics. And these follow the charts that I showed you earlier. So again, across the top, right up here is isolating symptoms, minimizing outbreak probability, physical distancing, respiratory hygiene, and physical hygiene. And then along the left-hand column, this is classrooms. So these are some things that we will try to do in our classrooms to help mitigate risk. So for example, classroom teachers will assign seats to support contact tracing. So this morning we worked with the local health department and said, how will we handle if we get a positive case, contact tracing? And so we have a protocol for that now with our local health department. Crossed here, oh, down too far, sorry. Talks about in that same table, how classroom teachers will do their very best to face kids one direction, not in small groups, move unnecessary furniture out of their rooms, get as much physical distancing as possible. Talks about every student's expected to have a face covering and wear it when distancing isn't possible. We wouldn't expect a student to go out to a PE class when they can get ample distance between themselves and run around in a mask if we can achieve some other protective factors. So some people have asked, are students going to be in masks all day? Probably it depends on the situation in which they find themselves. All right, and then if you go through that document, it goes into transitions and what we're doing at entry and exit points, what we do in transportation, restrooms, cafeterias, large group gatherings, and so on. And we expect this document will grow as we think of other settings that we need to have some mitigating tactics in. We can add those in, and so we kind of kept this open-ended as well. I mentioned earlier our protocols. So these are protocols that all of our schools will be trained on. This is the illness protocol. It goes through in detail and talks about what happens if a student becomes unwell at school, how they'll be handled at the front office, how front office personnel are to handle masking up and putting the student in a mask and calling parents and having them pick the student up and disinfecting after the student goes. And all of those protocols are in here as well. And we'll have protocol sheets for all of those things. When we spent the morning with the health department, this is our case investigation and contact tracing protocols. So we saw these for the first time this morning from the health department. Gives very detailed instructions if the health department is notified of a positive case, how they handle that with the family in question, what they notify the school of, what the school does with regards to tracing, contact tracing in the school of who are some high-risk individuals that this student may have been in contact with, and how do we mitigate that, that risk in the school environment. So we'll have to take these and build them into our protocols as well so that we train our administrators on how to handle that. But that's kind of how those documents work. Any questions about any of those issues from the board? Okay. This document you did not have earlier in the week because, as I said, we got this one first thing this morning, so. Okay, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks for all your work, Tim.
Yeah. Does anyone have questions at this point on the board?
I'll get him.
My question
Okay.
for Tim is, have you had any sleep in the last 3 weeks?
Enough. Yeah, I'm glad I got COVID early, so you can get over it.
And can we ask additional questions after public input as well?
Mhm. All right. Okay, thank you, Tim. You and your district staff, we appreciate all that you've been doing this summer and putting this together. And now that those who are here, present here, have had a chance to hear some of this explained to them, we're going to open it up for public comment. And this will be the protocol. You will need to, as you come up, sign up on the clipboard that's right here by the hand sanitizer, and then come to the microphone because this is being recorded so we can put it out after this meeting is over. Your comments are limited to 3 minutes, and so we will have a timer going up here on the screen where you can see how much time you have. You can go less than 3 minutes, but no more. As a board, we won't be commenting on any of your comments. We'll be taking your ideas and thoughts and suggestions into consideration. And just upfront, so you know, we were going to vote on this plan whether to approve it or not, but we will probably postpone that vote until after our district has had time to process all of the comments that are made and see if there's places where they can adjust things to make everyone feel a little more comfortable in this crazy situation that we're in right now. We do ask that everyone who presents, please be respectful and be kind. And we want to leave this meeting as friends and as educators and parents who really want our students to succeed in education this year. So, anything else that I need to pass on? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead then. So if you want to come up, do you want phone numbers by their names?
If you would like a personal response back to your question, and you want to give us your phone number, we will have somebody get back with you personally.
Okay. All right. We will go ahead then.
Hi, friends. My name's Teresa Stanton. Most of you know me. Hello. I promise
Get
I'm
as close to
smiling.
that mic as you can.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Not very well.
Okay. So can I first ask a quick clarifying question? I noticed that initially it said personnel comments are prohibited. So can I speak to you as a parent?
Sure.
Okay. So actually what I'd like to do, can I have a minute and a half to speak to you as a teacher and then a minute and a half to speak to you as a mom? Can we do that?
Okay. That'd be great.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEA president. So first I'm going to speak as an educator. First of all, sincerely, thank you so much for being so responsive to our thoughts and concerns. It's been a really stressful summer for most of the teachers that I know, most of the educators I know. We've been missing our students tremendously. We've been seriously worried about them. We've been trying to figure out how we're going to create engaging instruction. And for a lot of us, we're very concerned about our own safety and health. And I know that our plan currently effectively addresses many of our concerns. I have approximately a zillion emails that I've gotten from various educators, and they were asking me to share their concerns at this meeting. I will not have time to do that effectively. What I'd like to do instead is I'll write them all down and I will email them to all of you. So then all of those educator concerns will be shared in that way. And then the other thing I wanted to share is I wanted to talk to you as a mom, and I also wanted to talk to you as a daughter. My mom is an RN. She's retired now, but she had a very long career as a nurse the whole time I was growing up. And between all the things I caught at school and all the things she brought home from the doctor's office, I was sick a lot the first couple of years of elementary school. And then since she has retired, she spent a big chunk of the last school year volunteering in my daughter's kindergarten class at Canyon Elementary. So speaking to you as a mom, I know that we are working really hard to keep everybody safe, and we're taking really strong stances for safety and social distancing. And I think that everyone is going to try like crazy to actually follow all those protocols. It's going to be really, really hard to scale into a school setting. My mom would come home and tell me stories about how gross the kindergartners were, and how even though they were so cute, they would like eating boogers and playing with each other's stuff. And my sweet little daughter, even with me as a teacher, got sick an awful lot that first year. So I am concerned about what this is going to look like in a school setting once we get all our kids in together. And I know we're going to try. We're going to try like crazy. I personally am planning.
On behalf of the Northern Utah UniServe and Cash Education Association and educators generally, in particular those who identify as high risk, I would support enthusiastically 2 adjustments to the plan. I heard kind of one just a moment ago. First, to borrow an image from the governor, is to think of returning to school as a dial rather than a switch, and consider a phased half-day approach, soft open model to start for a certain duration. In Box Elder, they're doing a half-day model to start off first. That's to deal with the time. I think you saw the things that they were talking about with the time of exposure. And then, of course, the other district in the valley is doing a soft open for about a month, alternating AV each day. I think this would demonstrate the caring for health even more tangibly as we evaluate the impact of COVID-19 in that interim, whether that was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. And when, as Teresa said, it would give you a chance to ramp up and really evaluate how things are looking. While also attending to in-person educative needs, providing necessary relationship building should you return to remote learning. I think you need some time with your teachers to be able to do that. And the second adjustment would be to implement mask wearing more robustly. Ideally, we know that masks and distancing done together would be most effective. The virus doesn't really care about intentions or wait until it's been worn 3 times before it infects you. So just as a father and the teacher in the district, as a patron, and as a representative of educators, I thank you for your time and ask you to consider those.
Thank you.
Hi there. Eileen Davies, teacher. Are we going to supply families with hotspot Wi-Fi? I had kids trying to do their online work with their cell phones. It didn't work real well for a lot of them, and we had a lot of problems that way. Are we going to have buses out there? I had kids in church parking lots trying to do their homework. Just a question. The next one is the heat in the middle schools. I know you guys are well aware that South Cache and North Cache are not all air conditioned. And in some of the classrooms, and I taught in one for over 10 years, this time of year, it would get up to 90 degrees in my room. And when we start putting masks on those kids and the temperatures of those rooms go up, I'm worried about heat exhaustion, especially for somebody my age. I really worry about that. And it's going to be at both North and South Cache. I don't know what elementaries are not air conditioned, but that is another problem. I'm also concerned about sharing supplies. I know the kids are supposed to have all of their own supplies, their own color pencils, everybody has their own textbooks, but I don't have enough textbooks to check out. They're too valuable anymore. You can't get them. And if I have kids sharing textbooks and a virus is shared because of textbooks, I'm quite worried about that. And I know you know the Cache County Fair is going on. It's from the 6th through the 8th of August, 14 days after. We're right in the middle of school. So I am concerned about that time frame, and we could be a possible hotspot. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie.
let Mike down now. Thank you.
Very short. Hi.
Hi.
So most of you, I wanted to make sure you had a face to put with the name of the lady who emailed you a ridiculously long document of questions. That's me, Jenny Mansfield.
Yeah.
I promise I am not as uncompromising or neurotic as it appears in my email. And I wanted to thank Randall Bagley. Thank you for calling me. I appreciate so much your response and your transparency. Every time I have asked a question, with the exception of the giant list of questions, they've been answered, and I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. One thing that I am really concerned about is our teachers. Because how many of you are here because of a teacher that has changed your life? I mean, Mr. Jepson I was his library aide in 7th grade. And I still remember him. It was one of the best the best way to spend my time in middle school. And it seems like a really poor way to repay them, to give them all of these things to do without giving them any additional things with which to do them. 45 minutes at the end of the day is not enough for them to do everything that they're being asked to do. They don't get paid enough as it is. I know you can't change that, but they don't have the time, they don't have the resources of any kind to do this. They already fund their classrooms out of their own pocket so much of the time. And now we're asking them to go back into a classroom and say, wear your mask, good luck. And again, like the previous speaker mentioned, air conditioning. River Heights Elementary, where my daughter goes, is not air conditioned either. So air circulation is a huge factor when it comes to minimizing spread. If we don't have air conditioning, we've just got stifling classrooms, right? That's not safe for our kids or our teachers. And I'm very concerned about how teachers are going to be compensated for their sick days. Are they going to be given additional sick days? As it stands, they get 10 a year. That covers exactly 1 quarantine. And what about our parents who are also our teachers who are also parents? What if their kid has to quarantine? That doesn't cover that either. And we can't ask them to stay home unless they know that they're not going to be docked for that, if they're not going to be docked pay, if they don't have to use their personal days for that. Otherwise, how can we expect them to stay home? Same with parents. I mean, we're given a choice, and I appreciate that there is that choice and childcare supervision. It is not a choice. It is an illusion of choice. Because you don't have the option to keep your kid home safe if you have to go to work. And you don't have the option to keep your kid home distance learning if you have a Chromebook with no Wi-Fi. That's not a real choice that we're giving parents. So I too would put in my vote for some sort of soft opening. I really do like the idea of going back a half day, something that gets us there with that dial mentality rather than a switch. Because we owe that, not just to these kids, but to these teachers, because they're the ones that are going to bear the brunt of this. Yeah. I'm out of time, but thank you. I appreciate your time and efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melissa Spencer, and I represent moms of kids at school. I've had my kids at Heritage Elementary. And just I have 2 main issues that have actually been mentioned, but I wanted just to give one real life example of a neighbor of mine who is a single mom with 4 kids and was able to get Chromebooks for her kids, but because of the no Wi-Fi, she gave up by the end of March. They were done with school. There was just no way for her kids to complete their school tasks. So when I found out, I was able to start having the kids come to our house and do their work, but that is a really valid concern, is the Wi-Fi. And it's a reality for a lot of families who do not have Wi-Fi, and they just rely on the Wi-Fi off their cellular data. The other question, and I'm sure this will come out further, but for my kids in elementary, I am curious how lunch will look, how recess will look. And, that's a place where it's hard to wear masks, and you obviously can't wear masks at lunch. And I'm in the schools weekly, and I just cannot picture how this is going to go in an elementary school. So any further information on that would be really helpful to us as parents. And the last thing, and I did hear that you just barely found out this morning, but my biggest concern is, what is the protocol when someone does test positive? Twice now I've been in close contact with the person who tests positive, and then we have to quarantine, and even though we don't get sick, it's very disruptive. So I'm just curious, how does that look when Melissa next to you is they test positive in your class, and what do the kids just continue to go and know? I just want to understand how that looks. So I think you just barely got that information today. So if that could be distributed, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, my name's Missy Best. I'm on the parent side of things is where I'm coming from. I'm also an ER nurse. My full-time job. So just a few things that I was asked to ask, and then I know you guys can't answer, but there's been hearsay that if kids don't go to school wearing masks, not wearing masks, they can't be necessarily kicked out. So they could still get the education if they're not wearing a mask. There was a part in there that said it's expected to wear a mask if you can social distance, but really how often is that going to be, and do they have to wear the masks all the time? With the concerns of the really hot rooms, if you can maybe look at, and I don't know how logical this would be, like the partitions, or maybe even the face shields, like, I don't know what her name is, but the lady in the red dress. Like the face shields like that rather than the masks, because in the ER, we can choose to where we have goggles and a mask, or we have a face shield we can use and it works as the same. So that might be a thing to look at so the kids aren't so foggy in their face masks. A thing to look at too, if they do the half-day model, some of the parents can't feasibly do that either if they have full-time jobs and have their kids home half day and then doing that kind of stuff. You know, still daycare is a hard issue if you have to do half day. And then the last lady, Melissa, also did this, but for me, I am in contact with COVID positive patients every day I work, because I work in the ER. So they come in every single day. So does that mean my kid's banned from school? Like, what are your protocols for her? Because I've never tested positive. I went to New York, worked out there for 2 weeks during the huge pandemic back in April, back in New York. Never tested positive for it, but where I'm in close contact with positive patients every day, does that mean my kid quarantines every single day? So that's kind of stuff on my end to look at for that. Another thing to look at too is in the immune systems. We get bits of immunity to different things every time we come in contact with somebody. Not saying that we have to like full blow contact with everybody right now, but our immune systems could potentially go down if we are always wearing masks, because then we're not coming in contact with those little tiny viruses all over the place. So that's another thing to look for. And then my biggest thing is my daughters are going to be playing sports. So as a spectator, are we going to be able to come in and actually watch our kids play sports, or are we going to have to go on Zoom and watch them play from the screen, which would not really be fun at all. So my biggest thing is with that is just the spectators. Are we going to be allowed to be able to support our kids inside the schools and go from there? So there's a few of them. I think that's all, and I have 6 seconds.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one more. Is teachers going to have to teach like online and in the classroom, or do you have separate teachers doing the online stuff and then the separate teachers doing the in-person too?
Thank you. And please remember to put your phone numbers if you would like someone to get back to you from the district. And you may want to use the hand sanitizer after you've been up here touching mutual space here.
I'll sign after. My name is Desiree Stodart. I teach at North Cache Middle School. She's right, it's hot. However, at the end of last year, several of us used our legislative money to have fans installed in the ceilings in our classrooms. Are we even going to get to turn them on? Because it blows the germs around. Kind of like a giant hair blower, you know, and so on. Anyway, that just occurred to me. My mantra last year was the Beatles. Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? I was 64 last year when school started. I turned 65. I think I still have something to give, but my age says I'm old. I am high risk now. I have 2 individuals in my personal family who are also high risk. A husband who's 72 and a son who has chronic asthma. So I'm concerned. I can't imagine anything worse than giving a family member something that kills them. And along those lines, that has me concerned for my students. I have taught at least 2 students each year the last 3 years who have had diabetes. At least 2 students each year that have had asthma. One with lupus, one with Crohn's disease, and a couple of times students who have seizures. As a teacher, I feel responsible for those students. Now, yes, those students' parents can opt them out. But sometimes those very students are the ones who need to be in the classroom, being accepted, being served. And I'm concerned when some of the guidelines, and bless all of your hearts, people who have worked on all those, I can't imagine having tried to write those in the past 2 months and the pressure they're under. It's hard to know what to do when the guidelines say, when reasonable. Social distancing, if possible. It's hard to make decisions. I've been trying to think, how can I arrange the chairs in my classroom? And I can't arrange 30 chairs in my classroom to be 6 feet apart. I just can't. And I've rethought things that I can do in the classroom. I teach math. Well, if Johnny asks for number 12, I can easily go to the board and say, anybody who's working on number 12, here it is, let's work through it together. But I can't, I'm just at a loss for how I know to make decisions and plan and guidelines for my personal family safety and for these students with these illnesses safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment?
My name is Eldon Coyle. I'm a parent. So 2 things. I'd also be interested in the soft opening like Logan is doing. I'd like to voice that opinion again. And then in the email we received about the new plan, I noticed that it said there were 6,000 responses representing 90% of the families. So knowing how the internet works, there's a pretty good chance that 90% of our families would never respond to anything. So I feel like there might be some deception involved in this survey. I know a common practice for people who like to get their way is to share survey links on Facebook with all of their friends and have people who are not in the county fill out these surveys so that they get what they want. So I'd just like to ask that we verify that these responses actually represent what the constituents desire. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would like to put your phone number down, that'd be great.
My name is Scotty Anderson. I'm a 33-year veteran of Cache County School District and teach at ceramics and English. English and ceramics at Green Canyon High School. Let me begin by saying as tough as things were last spring for us, you guys have a whole lot tougher job than we do. I would not want to be in your shoes right now. I also welcome the opportunity for kids to be back in school again. I'm looking forward to seeing them face to face. when I chatted with Randy Benyon and Dave Swenson last spring, they said, how are things going online? I said, I'm working twice as hard and I'm being half as effective. This was not a good experience for me. So I do support the opening of the schools to kids. I'm not in favor of a soft opening, as was suggested before. Sorry. But I would also suggest too, I like the idea of kids that want to stay home, staying home. I think teachers that would like to stay home should be given that opportunity too, and be allowed to teach online. I don't know why the good lady that was here a minute ago can't just continue to teach, but from home, instead of the other online option that we were talking about a minute ago. So again, I appreciate your time. I don't envy your position, but I do welcome the plan that you guys have, and think that, sorry, that's really awful. I think things are going to be okay. I really do. I'm not that worried. I think there will be some tense times, and I think we'll deal with those as we have to, like we always have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Scott.
Hi, my name is Amy Earl, and I have twins in high school, and I have an elementary school. And I felt like I was divided among trying to walk around all day asking people, what are they doing? What should you be doing? Is there another communication source besides Google Meet for online classrooms and stuff? Because I sat there and I looked and I tried to follow my son's elementary classroom party every week, and it was really hard to do that. And then all three of my sons have IEPs, so therefore there's the extra things that was added to my plate, like speech and reading aids, and it was challenging. So I am all for going to school with a mask. I asked all my kids if they wanted to go to school, if they would wear a mask. They said yes. We just want to be available to have that in-school experience, whatever that looks like. And I really hope that there's not another soft closure after we start in and get everybody back in school. I hope that 2 weeks later is like too many cases or something, and then they just close school, do another soft closure. So I really hope if we can move forward with the opening of schools, that it stays that way for the whole entire school year. So there's not this back and forth. So those are my concerns, is that we all are in a very interesting thing. And the other thing too is, have we ever thought about encouraging people to take extra vitamin D, because that does fight off the virus. Like my husband works in a high risk situation. He's an essential employee, and he has been taking extra vitamins to make sure that he takes care of his own personal safety. So have we ever thought about encouraging people to research holistic things to help them not take the virus?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melissa Giddings, and I teach first grade. One of the big concerns that I have is dealing with the first grade class. I am 100% for coming back to school. The online teaching for me as a first grade teacher was tough. I worry about social distancing. Obviously, I get the masks. I'm not quite sure what masks are going to look like in my classroom with first graders. We're obviously going to do our best. When I read the plan, part of me felt the plan didn't incorporate for social distancing. I certainly can't seat my first graders far enough apart. We do reading groups in first grade at a horseshoe table. We tend to have 6 or 7 first graders. In that situation, they need to see my mouth. I need to see theirs. I teach phonics, how important that is. I know that there are no easy answers across the board, and not everybody is going to be happy. I very much appreciate what everybody does and is doing in your positions, Tim's position, principal's positions. I appreciate the raise that has been approved for us for this coming year. I'm worried about technology in my classroom. People tell me that for being a teacher, sometimes don't have a loud enough voice, so I worry about being in the classroom. My little lapel mic, I don't think is going to pick up my voice very well for my first graders. So different questions. I am in an elementary school that has spotty air conditioning. There are some rooms that have air conditioning and some rooms that don't. Mine happens to be one that does not. And I have been sweating in this room that has obviously air conditioning behind my mask. So that is one concern. I love being a teacher. I love my job. I love Tie-Dye Tuesday, which is what today is. And I will do my very, very best, but there are certainly concerns that I have and the teachers that I work with have. But thank you very much for what you're doing.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name's Angela Carter. I'm a mom. I just have 2 questions. If the kids will be turned away from the bus if they are not wearing a mask, if masks will be provided to families, if you got to buy them, and if families cannot afford masks, how will they be provided for the families? I'm worried about, I have a little 7-year-old and he had issues with kids last year, and I'm worried that just about shaming if he can't keep his mask on, and he has nose issues. He can't blow his nose. And it worries me to death. I cannot sleep because of this whole thing. I know masks are very important, but it worries me a lot about my kids being able to go to school and keep the masks on all day. And I was going to say maybe the possibility of, not having mandatory masks at like recess when they're outside, maybe like where they can get a break from that if that's a possibility. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Going once, going twice. Aha.
My name's Cindy Allen, and I'm a health teacher. And I just want to tell you thank you. I know you guys have had sleepless nights, worried, and I know you care and love your teachers and your students, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wendy Falslev. I'm a mom of 5 girls. And when school closed in March, my oldest is a college student, and she has a fiance that's a college student, and he was quarantining with us as well. I had a senior in high school at Green Canyon, and I had a 8th grader at North Cache and a 2nd grader at Summit Elementary. And let's just say my world got turned upside down. And I have a genius husband that knows everything about computers. So luckily we were able to get that all situated with all of them. And the first 2 weeks were not easy, figuring out and navigating the system, Google Classroom and all that. But we eventually got it figured out. And my 2nd grader is someone who's very social and loves to be around friends and loves she'll say she doesn't love it, but I know she does because she's the social butterfly. And she loved, her classmates. And what I'm getting at is I had to give her breaks every 5 minutes to get her to sit down and do her schoolwork. And I'd have to sit there right next to her. And I'd ask her, does the teacher do this with you at school? And she goes, oh, no. I'm like, then why am I doing this? I'm like, what? So I'm against the soft closure. When I asked her if she wanted to do online school again or go back to school, she said, oh, go back to school, I need my friends. And I was like, about that. They're gonna try and social distance you as much as you can, which I understand, I get it. They need each other. And I'm worried that we're making a society of germaphobes. And I realize I'm not saying that COVID's not a real thing, because it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. But as a mom coming with kids with all different age groups, and it was a struggle. And so I'm very much against the soft closure. And I do think it's wonderful that you are giving options for online. I think that's great, so that it can kind of fit everyone's situation. And so I just wanted to share my experience and my story with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathy Marconi, and I'm a parent of one child left at home. And a lot of people are talking about having multiple different kids at school and everything and different grades. And when COVID hit, this woman stood up and worked 12, 14-hour days at her job. And so did my husband. And so we were almost a couple weeks behind getting the laptop, getting to the school to get the thing. And then trying to navigate through it after being up for 14 hours. So we're grateful that we had it. But in the meantime, I'm sure he's not in here, I racked up a $900 counseling bill for this poor kid. And I couldn't wait for his school to be over. You're gonna all think I'm ridiculous. But I got him on a plane and I sent him to Arizona to my sister's house, where somebody was retired there and my sister worked from home because I wasn't home and he was just having so much trouble with online schooling. Again, we were grateful for it. But when I asked him, you want to online or you want to go to school? He said, Mama, please send me back to school. So let's get the kids to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Be sure and sign.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Fowler. I'm a 2nd grade teacher. I'm really new to teaching. This is my 2nd year in teaching. So my first year of teaching was doing distance learning, which was really, really hard, especially with kindergartners, which was very challenging. I'm really excited to go back to schools, but some of my concerns with my teaching style, I really like to have social interaction, partners, group work, working with students one-on-one if they're struggling, but I'm not sure how that will take place with the social distancing and providing that space. In my school, I worry about my fellow colleagues that have giant class sizes. My class is a little bit smaller. It's 19 students, but that's the smallest class size within my school. Typically, each class is like 30 plus. So I just worry about them. I worry about lunch times, being able to have teachers take a break, but also allowing students to be able to eat with one another. From what it looks like right now, some teachers will be in their classrooms for half of it, half of the days. And then with preps, it's looking like some of the prep classes are too small, which would bring them into our own classrooms, which teachers have to decide. Them being in their own classrooms, does the teacher need to stay there to be able to facilitate and control the students being able to not destroy said classroom? So there's a lot of things trying to process it all, but I know it's a really, really hard thing for you guys, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All righty. I guess what I'll do is just ask the board members if any of you have questions or concerns.
I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. I guess, first of all, I just want to repeat my name. It's Chris Corcoran. I'm the school board member that represents the precinct that covers Hyde Park and North Logan. So I'd invite any of you, in my precinct who have specific concerns to contact me. And I think, as you've heard, any one of us, I think, is willing to be contacted as well as anybody in the district office. And I just want to make a comment before I react to the plan on just one angle. I just want to let the public know, those people who have shown up, how much I appreciate you coming here. And teachers, parents. I have to admit, I've only been on the school board now for probably about a year and a half, and I think all of us have seen news reports from around the state over the past couple of weeks of school board meetings that have been held in districts everywhere. And I could not have asked for just a more respectful, constructive discussion from those who have participated in this meeting. I just want to tell you how deeply grateful I am for your comments. I mean, they've, Tim and Superintendent Norton and the others who work for the district office, I know that they're going to be, trying to respond as well as they can to these comments. So I just really appreciate your participation. And I think that we've all identified a few themes, some things that have resonated among a lot of these comments that I'm sure that we can respond to as this plan continues to evolve, as we head into this new year. One thing, and I want to thank Tim and the other members of the district administration for their work on this plan. This has involved a lot of work, and as some people have pointed out, we haven't had a lot of time to work on it, given the time frame that the state's given us. I think one of the themes that we have identified and has to do with the teachers who have gotten up and spoken and shared their feelings. And I want you to know, in the public, that actually thinking about this the last few days has consumed a lot of my time. Put aside a lot of the work I had at my day job just to kind of, really think about this a lot over the past couple of days, because I think it's affecting all of us so deeply. We want to make sure that we make the right calls. And, I've been thinking a lot about the teachers. I know that, Tim, you talked about the survey that you shared with the teachers, that, you know, you got a lot of responses to that survey, and that's shaped, you know, how you've put together the draft of this plan, how the district office has handled this. I think, you know, and just looking around at how teachers feel across the country right now, I think it's safe to say that there's a lot of worry. I mean, of course, you know, Mr. Anderson, I appreciate his comments tonight. You know, there are teachers maybe that are less worried, that are eager to get back, and then there are other teachers who are quite worried. And, you know, across the country, as I've looked at what other districts around the nation are finding with their teachers, it's pretty consistent. You know, that anywhere between 20% and 1/3 of teachers, depending on the district, have expressed worry about even coming back in the fall at all. You know, if there's in-person teaching, you know, there are a high percentage of teachers who would actually rather go online, which is kind of in contrast to, I think, how a lot of parents feel. You know, we've had a couple of teachers from our district talk about the vulnerability that they feel. And I guess as a board member, you know, that's worrisome because, you know, one article that I read today about this, I think it had to do with teachers in Arizona. You know, I've reviewed surveys from Michigan, Minnesota, California, and a lot of other states as I've thought about this. And, you know, one district official commented, and I think, Tim, you alluded to this as well, that it's kind of a district's nightmare to think about teachers not coming back, you know, or not being able to teach because they worry about their own health and safety. And I'm certain that that's the case in our district as well. I'm certain that there are a lot of teachers that do feel vulnerable and wonder what their role is going to be in the fall. And so I guess I don't have so much a question as just maybe some suggestions on in my role on the board in terms of involving teachers. I think that, you know, more than anybody else here in this room, it appears that teachers have the most questions about the nuts and bolts of this plan and how we're going to keep students safe, you know, how that's going to happen, you know, on a day-to-day basis in terms of protocols and so on. I mean, I'm a university employee. I'm a professor at the university. We're dealing with the same issues, and the, you know, the details are important. And you know, I've also observed, you know, I'm looking at survey results from around the nation, that a lot of teachers feel kind of left out of the planning process. They feel like maybe they haven't been a part of planning out the kinds of details that will help them to feel confident that they're safe. And so I'm wondering if it is possible that as a part of the plan, because, you know, as you said, Tim, there's still a lot of details to fill in. As a part of the plan, it might be possible to do something like include teachers. And I mean, I know that you've gotten some of their feedback so far, but as you plan some of these standard operating procedures, that you include representative teachers who can help, and other staff, you know, professional staff, people who work in busing, people who work in food service, to make sure that they feel comfortable that they're going to be safe, and that they have options. You know, we don't, you know, there are obviously a lot of questions that they have. Some of them have been repeated by several teachers here today. But if there could be some sort of district commission or committee that would allow these teachers to feel like they've got buy-in to this plan, that they understand what the details are, and they don't, they feel less vulnerable. That's kind of my only overarching comment. And the only reason I offer that is because, you know, as I considered this over the past several days and thought quite a bit about it, I think that what I've heard from the teachers who have shared their feelings today resonates because it appears to be consistent with what we're hearing across the country. And so I want to make sure the teachers, they're the ones that we're throwing in we're the ones that we're throwing into the breach, and we want to make sure that they don't feel vulnerable.
Okay, thank you. All right. Oh, okay, Terry.
After listening to Chris, I also want to say that I have read a lot of documents on this also, and I appreciate Tim and our district's document. It's not just Tim's, I understand that, but he has been the leader, and I appreciate that it is broad because we have 26 schools in our district, and every one of them is somewhat unique. The classrooms are unique to each teacher, and as the student body in each classroom is unique. And I think it bears discussion or thinking about that teachers in school actual school building communities really need to come together with their cohorts within those schools to help the principal figure out how are we going to make this work. Because a district mandate or a district broad blanket statement is not necessarily going to help this school over here and this school over here with the same effectiveness. You know what I'm saying? And so I appreciate that the plan is broad, and some people called it vague, but I think that allows for the individual school leadership and teachers to come together and not be dictated to by the district, but find solutions specific to their schools and their school communities.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Any other board members? Go ahead.
I just think it's essential that we keep flexibility as a part of this, because as Tim mentioned several times, what's true today may be totally out of sync by tomorrow. And the only effective plan is going to be one that can allow us to learn and adjust. And I think if we approach it that way, we have a better chance of meeting the needs of all individuals.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to say something if
Yeah.
any other board member. I too would like to thank you for coming. If I'd have known how you were going to act, I'd have slept better for the last week. And I sincerely want you to know this is one great district, but this has been one great problem to try and solve. And Tim talked about a partnership. I prefer to call it something a little stronger. I have got to have a compact with each of you and your families, and each family in each home in our district, or this isn't going to work. The laboratories that we have across the world who have opened schools already, because they're on different schedules than what we are on. We've had some real successes and we've had some failures. And the successes can be attributed to the fact that they got the virus under control in their community before they tried to open their schools. We've got a few days, and we can have a few more days if we need it. But we as a community need to get control of this virus in our community. And you've got to come to the conclusion how you can help make that happen. But I'm going to direct you to a couple of documents, and I hope you'll spend some time. The study that came out of Brigham Young University on mask wearing, it's worth a read. It's only about 9 pages long, but there's an executive summary if you don't want to read the whole thing. They had nothing to gain from doing this. These aren't people who had anything to gain. They weren't out to prove anybody right or wrong. They just wanted to know, does it help to wear masks? And it does, folks. The evidence is out there. So let's don't make it a political issue. Let's just make it a community issue that we're going to wear masks and we're going to make it work. And we're going to do that with this in mind. If you ever pay attention to anybody in media, you ought to pay attention to Boyd Matheson. He's an opinion editor for the Deseret News. And he wrote an article called Utah's, now I'll get it straight, Utah's 55-day moonshot, our quest to quell the pandemic. He set the time frame as Labor Day. He said Utah ought to be the state that sets the example of how to get this thing under control. And it's a well-written document. And I only want to read one paragraph from it. He talked early in the article about John Kennedy and the challenge to go to the moon. That speech was given in 1962. We were light years behind the Russians at that time, and he dared to say that we would be the first country to get a man on the moon, and we would do it in that decade. And I still remember being in Japan in 1969 and watching that moonwalk. And so he starts off this paragraph by saying, as John Kennedy said about going to the moon, we choose this 55-day moonshot not because it is easy, but because it's hard. We want our children safely in school and our vulnerable population secure come Labor Day. Don't we all want that? Don't we want to know our grandma and grandpas and parents are safe and that our kids are having a good experience in school? That's what we all want, but you got to work for it. We want our churches safely opened and we want our economy to be humming by fall. This goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Please take time to read it. Please take time to look at the BYU study. And then I need a compact. I need a contract with you. You don't send your kids to school sick. And I promise you as a school district, we'll give them the very best education for the whole school year if you want to send them to us in person. And if they end up being sick for periods of time during the school year, we'll give them a quality education with the same teacher they had in their school at your home. And it won't be the same thing we did in March. Okay? And if you don't want to come because you just can't quite work it out right now, then let's go online and we'll give you an online experience. It won't be like March. And I can promise you, I'm one of those guys. You can look at me and know that I'm at risk. I have grandkids who go to school in this district. And I have a daughter who teaches in it. And I'm not going to open our schools if it's not safe to do so. We'll have all the assurances we need, and we'll have COVID under control in our valley, or I'll make a recommendation to the school district that we just hold off, or we go online. But we're not going to put people in jeopardy. Those school districts that have opened with their youth have found that they're pretty resilient to this virus. They don't spread it the same way, especially if they're 10 and under. And I think we can have a great experience, but we got to have your support, because it doesn't matter what I say on any given day. If you get up in the morning and your kid's sick and you send him to one of our schools, I can't control what's going to happen to the other kids or the teachers or staff or bus drivers. So we have to have a commitment. And I know I can get that. You want the same thing I do. So thanks for coming.
Thank you. I would like to thank everyone for coming and giving us your input. There's a lot of things I love about Cache Valley, but right up on the top of my list is all of the good people who live here. And I certainly do appreciate our district and how forward-thinking they are and how much they really care about the people, including students, parents, teachers, and staff. And we will go ahead and conclude this discussion on the opening of school. If you would like to stay for the rest of our meeting, you are more than welcome to do so. If not, this is probably a good opportunity for you to leave. But once again, thank you for coming and sharing.
Thanks, kid.